failover, which means I have to VLAN some traffic from one building to the other so it doesn't get confused with the other traffic and all this stuff. So it's a big deal. But by the time it's done, I will have not only fiber backbone, but then also as a failover, the Ubiquiti backbone. So that's just one of we're doing 3 or 4 different things, but that's the big one. And that requires new IP addresses for everything in those 2 buildings. And it's crazy. It's going to be nutty.
I'm not sure this is the show to do it, but I'd be curious to understand how you typically network to different sites, and if they're isolated, at mine, the sites are typically 5 miles away, and we only have a few pieces of gear, so it's part of the same network. I don't go through a router at the site. But when I get a second possible feed at that site, then I got to start thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah, I always use routers because I want to put them into a VPN and connect them all via VPN. And one of the reasons I do that, first of all, because it's easier to have it all on one big network, but also when you're doing IP audio, the IP audio performs better through a VPN tunnel versus just wide open through the public internet. So, So in that respect too, everything is technically on the local network to me.
Suncast, we want to stream. Oh, we just start streaming. Good for you! Yay! Okay, let me like and share.
And so now my goal is to try to get in most places at least one extra path to the site, so that we're at least in the critical ones. I've got a couple of sites. I have some sites where if it goes off, I've got a local automation system or something. But I've got 2 big sites where I have to have 2 different paths.
Share this too,
because it's a new world, and microwave STLs are not in that world anymore.
Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean. Gotcha. And I'm not sure I'm going to call for any of the videos, but we'll see if only if we need to fill time. But I think Gotcha. Understood.
And I'm here, which means there won't be a lot of danger of needing to fill for time.
Oh my God.
I've been known to talk.
It's okay. Let's share this to one more place. El grupo. Man, I got so much Spanish rolling around in my head.
Oh, I bet.
I'm in Santo Domingo. I'm kind of doing okay. If you plot me in the middle of town and I had to go get a bite to eat and find a hotel room, I could probably do that. Thankfully, because a lot of people speak English.
Well, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
It does. But plenty of people don't either. If I was at a grocery store yesterday and I went up and I had the Spanish in my head, ready to go, ready to ask the question of the stocker in the aisle. And I walked up to him and I started to ask the question a little bit stiltedly, but I was getting the words out and they were correct. And he said, "Dude, you want to just talk English?"
Yes. I bet the food down there is fantastic, by the way. Speaking of
I got to tell we were at one restaurant on Columbus Square, and it's kind of a really public facing restaurant. It needs to be good. And it was good. It was good. Yeah. The service was a little slow, but it was good. We went to a restaurant yesterday in this town. I just love the name of this town. It's a beach town. It's called Juan Dolio. Juan Dolio. And we chose the worst restaurant in town. And I should have checked the Google reviews because they were awful. And somehow we chose that restaurant. And I left an awful one too.
I take it back. I guess the food sucks down there.
Carmen got into an argument with the lady who runs the restaurant. That's how bad it was.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Now, the good food, we've been to the grocery store twice, and Carmen's been cooking here at the apartment.
Well, yeah, but you eat like that all the time. So, you're lucky.
I know. I'm lucky. I'm so lucky. I'm blessed. Okay, I guess it's time to start the show, right?
I
All
believe so.
righty, good. Chris, I got to tell you, I'm blessed. We were just talking about I'm blessed by a wife who cooks well, but I'm so blessed to have you as co-host. It's really good to have you here, and
Oh,
I appreciate
stop.
you.
I,
Oh no,
it's
it's
nice,
true. It's
but
true.
stop.
It's true. Okay, let's see. Here we go. This is episode 693, and topic's going to be moving stuff. I like to move it, and we'll start our show in 3, 2. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Glad to be here. I'm in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, on a little post-NAB vacation. My wife, Carmen, is visiting family, and I think she's getting her hair did right now. And so I'm here in the apartment that we rented. Got a great apartment in Santo Domingo. And luckily, I don't have to do too much wandering around myself. I'm always on guided tours, so that's great. But hey, where I am isn't all that important. We're talking about moving. I certainly have moved here. I think I'm 1,600 miles from Nashville at this point. The weather has been hit and miss. It's been mostly beautiful sunshine, but sometimes enormous downpours. Like today, we had a huge downpour right when it was time to take the groceries to the car.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. That's when. Now, with me though is my reliable, faithful co-host. It's him in the flesh from Muckwonago, Wisconsin. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Starr. Hey, Chris.
Hello there. We haven't had any. I guess we're in for some rain this weekend, but it really has been nice here. It's been actually kind of just normal, which is good. We haven't had that for a while, so there you go. It makes. I've got to go this weekend. We were talking earlier. I've got a big project up in La Crosse, and part of that is the Minnesota side. And you saw the road the last time I was on that I have to go up and down to this transmitter site. So I'm hoping that the rain isn't so bad. I'm gonna have to try sliding up the hill in the mud and try to make it that way, because that's never fun. I've done that a couple of times, and that's no bueno.
It rained a lot on Tuesday here, and I mean it's either bright. It's like Florida. It's bright sunshine or pouring. Right. And we were supposed to go to Carmen's brother's Eduardo's house, which is in El Campo. It's out in the country. And I was looking forward to seeing something out in the country, because I'm in a big city. I mean, there's like 5 million people in this city here. I think half of the Dominican Republic lives in Santo Domingo. So I was looking forward to going, but that got canceled because she said, no, it's too muddy to go. We can't go. We can't go to Eduardo's house. So maybe another day later this weekend or next week. But you know what? Oh gosh, on this show we're not going to show it, but I've taken a lot of pictures of FM antennas and TV antennas.
Yeah, I saw some you posted on Facebook.
Yeah, there's a ton of them, and I hope to do the show, Chris, next week from a Santo Domingo radio station. I don't have one.
Oh, that'd be cool
out yet, but yeah, I'm going to try to find some English-speaking engineers to talk to and see how it goes.
I was actually surprised to see circularly polarized antennas. Usually, a lot of foreign countries, they use horizontal or vertical, and I was like, oh, those are just regular old antennas. What a surprise.
I guess all of them that I've seen have been circular. A lot of ERIs here and a few others as well. Maybe some JamPro. JamPro's always been big in Latin American countries. They've had a good sales force for that. But I want to see the transmitters too, or the transmisores as they call them. And of course the Spanish word for tower is torre, 2 R's, torre. So We'll get some tours hopefully next week. My colleague Juan Puña at Telos Alliance should get us hooked up with a.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, let's take a quick look at Nautel. They're our quick first sponsor. We love Nautel. All the things they do for us at the NAB show. They had the Nautel users group, and they're really wanting us to talk about this GV2 series of transmitters. They've upped the GV series. They've put a whole new brain inside of it, and this new brain, if you will, is so cool because it can run different things, including all of your HD software that's needed to run HD, and it can run all of your audio processing as well. You can get a complete Omnia 9 audio processing system in there, as well as all the stuff you need for HD. So it's software-based air chain support, Omnia for Nautel FM and HD audio processing. They have BlendLock FM HD synchronization. the Gen 4 X-Gen modulators in there, the Gen 4 V-porter, importer and exporter, and the air chain selector, all in there. And if you were at the Nautel users group, the NUG meeting in Las Vegas, you were treated to learning about what they've been able to do with this technology. One of those cool things that they announced, and we can mention it now, is they have this way to deliver EAS audio interruptions for EAS via Livewire, or the AES 67, I should say. It's AES 67 packetized audio with Livewire GPIO support, or Livewire control protocol, I should say, LWCP. What that means is that no more looping audio out and around, and no more depending on crazy external architectures to get your EAS on the air perfectly legally. They've come up with this really intelligent scheme to put to have an EAS unit. The one that they're working with at the moment is from DAS, Digital Alert Systems. It's I guess the newest DASDEC, and it can put itself on the air. If anything else tries to interrupt it during an EAS message, like if the automation says, "Hey, wait, that's my job. I'm supposed to be on the air," the EAS says, "Nope, nope, 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 nope. Well, EAS is on the air right now. Give it back to you in just a minute." And it's really intelligent. They can also do things to your PPM encoder during an EAS test if that's needed. There's and input switching is available too. This is so cool. And in addition to all these developments that are in the GV2, you can take a digital test drive your station on air with HD Digital. There's too many things to mention about how that works, but Nautel and Ubiquiti are making this pretty cool. Contact your Nautel representative for details on this HD digital radio test drive, because you might find that it's really worthwhile for you. It's so easy now, man. Oh, and I just built an HD station in a more standard way, although I did use the Nautel importer exporter, and that was cool. Thanks a lot, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech at nautel.com. All right, it's Chris Tarr and Kirk Harnack here. Chris, we're going to talk about moving radio stations, and I think we've got what we want to do is not only pass along stories of things that we've recently done, but things that we've learned and advice. So if you're planning a move, what are the things on your checklist that you need to really think about and maybe have a plan for? So Chris, I'm going to ask you to start things out. Tell us about your most recent project and how it went for you, and maybe what happened that you were that you planned for. Maybe if there's something happened that you didn't plan for but you had to work around.
Let me turn on my microphone first. This is an interesting one. We moved at a Class A license to Portage, Wisconsin, which is north of Madison, and we got a approval for a construction permit to move it to Stoughton, Wisconsin, which is south of Madison. Although this has been about almost 20 years in the making. It got approved many years ago before I joined the group. And their original plan was to build a tower in a little town called Rutland, which is just south of Stoughton. And it just was not going to happen. I mean, people fought it over and over and over again. The town was okay with it. The county was okay with it. All the officials were all for it because it was going to be, first radio station for Stoughton. And but the neighbors out there just would not let a tower get built. They fought it every step of the way. So over years, there were all these court cases and all this stuff. And meanwhile, my coworker Dave just kept renewing the construction permit. So it had kind of been sitting in limbo for a while. And shortly after I joined the group, we bought this group of stations in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. And one day I was doing some paperwork and everything, looking at the tower site. And I went, I bet we could put that antenna for that Class A on a tower that we just bought with this other station in Fort Atkinson. They're very close. I bet we could, we could put the station there, and we own the tower. So I talked to our consulting engineer, and he was able to do some magic with some directional antenna. And sure enough, it worked. And so we started that process. But it was still, even from then, this has been probably 2 years that I've been working on this. So, basically there's a couple of ways to do a move. There's the cold cutover where you just turn off the transmitter, move everything, turn it back on. And then there's the kind of the hot cutover where you have the new stuff ready, you shut the old one off, turn the new one on. Well, in this situation, it really made sense to put in new things because uh, with the change in parameters and the directional antenna and things like that, we only needed about 1.5 kilowatts of TPO to make the 6 kilowatts. So, we had a big old CCA, 5 kilowatt CCA at this other site. Didn't make a lot of sense to move that huge honking transmitter down to a building that was already cramped up. So we bought one of the new Nautel VX2s and put that in. But there's so many things that go into this that you have to remember. I mean, again, we had a new antenna, new transmission line. I had to buy, and everything revolving around putting a station on the air. You have to do. I mean, there's transmitter processing, RDS, STLs, the whole 9 yards, and you're dealing with a new station, and unlike a transmitter, a full power class A. So obviously there's some expectations there about, coverage and performance. And, I don't want to say that I don't treat my translators seriously, but, with a class A, there's kind of that or anything, regular non-transmitter or non-translator station. There's kind of this expectation about how it's built. It's going to be there. It's licensed to be there forever. So, you really go through it over and over in your head, how you're going to make it happen. So, fast forward last year, we got the antenna up. We got the line put in. I got the transmitter. But then there's also, it actually worked out pretty well because the frequency is 95.9. And it just happens that in Madison, we have a translator that we were trying to figure out what to do with. And that frequency is 99.5. So, we were able to put them together, but that required, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. I'm thinking of all these things. That required going on one of our HD sub channels in order to be able to go to 250 watts on the translator in Madison. Mm-hmm. So there was that as well. Then there are the things that are non-technical. Like we had listeners of the radio station and it was going away. So it's a country format. We have another country format on a signal next town or two over in Reedsburg. So we were, spent a lot of time leading up to this, months, educating our listeners and our advertising partners to move to one of these other, to this other station, that's where everything is going. We just basically took the best of both stations and put them together up there. And said basically, hey, we're going to be gone soon. We're moving. And, here's where you can hear what you were hearing on this station. And once we were confident that pretty much everything was gone, everybody was gone and we were good to go, then we finally, shut things down and turn things on. So, really when you get ready to plan a station, there are so many steps to this. How are you going to do it? Are you going to, because I've done that too, where we've done a transmitter move and we actually reused the transmitter. So middle of the night, we shut it down, loaded the transmitter up on a truck and moved it. And I see that I often think that that's a common thing because, a lot of times in a move like that, if you have a transmitter, why would you buy another one? But I look at it as an opportunity. In this situation, here's an opportunity to upgrade to a solid state transmitter. Only takes up, like 4 rack units or something. It's crazy. And so, I would have been crazy not to do that. But, also, this was a station that was in a little bit smaller market where it was. And, it had an Omnia 1 for a processor, which is, they're fine, but it's not super competitive. So, I bought an Omnia 11 and, so there were a lot of things that went into this. And then, on the STL side of things, obviously I already had 2 stations there, so I'm adding a third. I need to figure out how to get the audio out there reliably. And that's also a factor in all of this. If you're moving sites, can you get audio to where you need to go? Can you get remote controls and how are you going to do that? And so, it's not something that you can do overnight. And it really is. It's like building a brand new radio station because you do have to, aside from all the FCC stuff, there's engineering involved. There's tower climbing. There's, very rarely you're going to find a site where you've already got, an antenna on your frequency and everything else. Um, and another thing that we didn't really think about, and it turned out it's going to be really good for us, is we now have a tower with nothing on it. We own the tower that the station was on up in Portage, and
yeah, the one you vacated, yeah,
the one we vacated, and we own the tower, and now there's nothing there. But what we're going to do is we also have two other Class A's up there that are nearby, and I'm going to build that site to be an aux site for them. So I'll put in a broadband antenna and a frequency agile transmitter at that tower. So we'll actually reuse the tower, and I'm going to use it as an auxiliary site for our other Portage FM and our Wisconsin Dells FM. But that's a whole other thing, is okay, what do we got to do there? And how do you repurpose that stuff? There's a whole lot of, and there were still things at the last minute that, you think about, I didn't do this, or, the big one for me was, if something's going to die, it's going to be in the first week or two. And here we are, launching a brand new station. You turn it on and go, okay, I don't want this to run 2 days and die. It would be bad. I'd have a bad day. Because once you do that, you can't go back. So we filed the license to cover. If this thing dies, we're done. And there's really no opportunity to test it because they're mutually exclusive. So they're close enough where I couldn't run them both at once.
I was going to ask that question. So thanks for answering that. Could you do them both at once? And the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. They would interfere with each other on the fringe. Yeah. I mean, they're far enough away where they don't overlap really, but it's north side of Madison, south side of Madison. So what we ended up doing is just to check coverage before we completely committed. One late night, we turned it on as an experiment, driving around and listening to it just to make sure it performed the way it was. But I mean, that's the other thing too, is you need to be flexible. I mean, this final form is nothing like what was originally considered. It was actually going to be a little bit closer to Madison, and this is a directional now. It was going to be non-directional. But to Dave's credit, when I came up with this and we started to research it, it was just a better, easier solution. And it turns out that for us, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it all kind of fell into place. We ended up having a really good signal in a market that at the time we didn't really care about, but we do now, which is Janesville, just north of Rockford. Yeah. Where the tower was originally going to be, it wouldn't have covered that. Where it is now, it covers it great. And it turns out that in those intervening years, we got this other translator that is in Madison that, is, frequency wise, you can't do better than 99.5 and 95.9. So we were able to simulcast on this translator, which covers Madison. So we ended up with this pairing that gave us this much bigger signal than what we would have originally had we built the tower in Rutland and went non-directional. So, but it did require, especially with Dave, I give him credit to kind of let that go where he really, because, for years he assumed this is how it was going to be. And he had planned all of this based on that, figuring, well, someday I'll get it approved and we'll get it from there. And when I brought this up, it was something that he didn't really consider and said, well, it's a little bit farther away from Madison than what we were expecting. And, that's really where the big city is. And, but he entertained it. And the more we moved down this road, he really started to see the benefits. And it also helps if you have a great consulting engineer. Justin Asher does our work. And, he looked at it and went, yeah, I think, there's some things that are close that, we'll have to see if we can get the commission to kind of be a little bit flexible on. But, we can totally do it. And that's what we did. So, be flexible, think everything through because you really are, you're building a new facility. And this is going to be, when you go on the air with this, that's your first impression. So, had we brought some of the janky old equipment that we had and kind of just half put it together, we're going to sign the thing on. It's going to sound horrible. And we, as a group, our policy is always, put it on in its final form. We've been known to wait if we can't get, for example, if we're putting a translator on and I can't get decent quality audio out there, we'll wait to sign it on until we can get that done, because that's our first impression. And
Yeah.
it's very important for us to have that good first impression. So in this case, it was like, yeah, we bought, the Omni 11, we bought all this other stuff, and it literally sat in a rack for almost a year. I've been drooling over it for so long, didn't want to turn it on. But we want, the timing had to be right.
I got a couple of follow-up questions. I'm curious about what it's really interesting that the purpose of this station, of this transmitter move, kind of morphed over time, and you're really found a better purpose over time than what you may have what the people before may have originally had. So it got better.
Yes.
You mentioned this translator at 99.5. How is that fed?
That is fed also via fiber. We feed all of our translators, all of our stations actually are fed via IP. I think I only now have three left, I think, that are STLs.
So that translator doesn't have to be fed by an HD2?
No, that is a lot of people don't understand that legally you do not have to actually simulcast the over-the-air signal. As long as it's the same programming, it can be fed anyway.
Is it the same program as what is on the 95.9, or the same program as what's on a different station?
No, it's the same. What we did is we ended up, I've got 4 HD channels now on my big Class B there. And so what we did is I put because it couldn't be a fill-in translator. The 99.5 couldn't be a fill-in translator for 95.9 because it's out of the 70 dBu contour. So what I'm doing is I simulcast 95.9 on an HD subchannel of a 50 kilowatt Class B, which covers the translator. So technically, and honestly, I hats off to Nautel and DTS and these other companies who've been working on HD. The way I have the partition split up, the HD subchannels are actually really good. I've been very pleased. The HD4 that this is on, it's almost as good as FM. I mean, it's not that swishy kind of low bit rate sounding thing. It's totally really listenable. And we like that. We actually promote it because obviously it's in some areas, much better signal than the analog signal is. So we actively promote that. And we have one other station on HD that we're doing. It's a translator that's simulcast on there. And for obvious reasons, we promote it there because it's, 250 watts versus, the Class B signal. And then we've got a third one that we're going to be activating pretty soon. So, and again, all of that wouldn't have been possible when this was first conceived because we didn't own that station. So along the way, we picked up the station and then, I started planting these little bugs. It's like, well, with HD, we can do this. And with this tower here, we can do that. It's this huge, almost 700-foot tower in this prime location. I mean, it's just a premium tower. So, I'm like, yeah, the game has changed from when you originally conceived this. We now have all of these different options. So, we had to be flexible, but then also, we had to look at it as how does this fit in technically with the other facilities at that site? Like I said, I've got, this huge, one of our aircraft carrier stations, one of our biggest stations is there. So obviously, I have to protect that at all costs. What can we do that isn't going to affect that? Yeah. Then I've got a translator up there and then this. So, we, again, with a translator, it's a lot easier to just throw up an antenna and call it good. And the FCC doesn't really scrutinize this. This being a directional FM, this required a lot of surveying. It had to be exactly at the, this certain height at a certain angle, and all of that had to be verified and measured. But with this site, obviously, I had to be very careful to protect the big dog on the tower and make sure that we could do that.
And actually, that's what I want to ask you about after our commercial break here is about the directional FM antenna. I know that there's been some rules passed that may simplify directional FMs, but I want to see what your experience was in getting that done, because certainly there are plenty of directional FMs that are, more of them exist now than before,
Sure.
because people want to squeeze these in. So I'm curious about that. All right. Hey,
Okay.
it's This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tarr. We're talking about moving your radio station. Chris is talking about moving transmitters. I think toward the end of the show, we'll talk about moving studios and some planning for that. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Bionics. Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for letting us use your space at NAB last week. Really appreciate that. And here's a little message to you about their Camera One.
Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need 1 camera for a studio wide shot and usually 1 camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast Bionics.
Broadcast Bionics won an award at NAB, and they're always coming out with cool stuff to make broadcasting better, actually to make your content better and help you deliver more new content and to get that content on the social media. Thanks so much, Broadcast Bionics. You can see them or reach them at bionics.co.uk or bionic.radio. Check them out. Thanks a lot, Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tarr here. Chris, you go shopping here in Santo Domingo, and we Americans, we're pretty full of ourselves. We like to think we have the best of everything. Oh yeah. I gotta tell you, the supermarkets here, supermercado, oh my god. Now, of course, there's little bodegas everywhere, and some of them are nasty and dirty and blech, like you'd expect in any city. Like the ones in New York City. But the supermarkets are freaking amazing. It's imagine a Walmart, a super Walmart, but with more stuff in stock. Mm-hmm. The Goya bean section, as you might expect, the Goya canned bean section is enormous.
Those are kind of a big deal.
The butcher's right there.
That's awesome.
Did I go away? Oh, there we go. So I want to show you a couple things. Of course, all around the world, this is everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's Sabor Original.
And does that have the actual real sugar in it?
That's a great question. I wonder if they have the ingredients here in a language I can read. I'll have to look at that. It's very tiny print. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what I don't see is much fresh milk. It's all the UHT milk.
Oh, okay. Yep.
The packaged milk. Lista milk, leche, rica, and then, Chris, I don't know. Do you like avocados?
No, actually, I do.
You
not.
don't like avocados? All my life I didn't.
My wife and I, it's kind of funny because my wife loves them, and so she and I, at least once a week joke about how much I dislike them.
Well, I never used to care for them. I just didn't see what the big deal was. And
Sure.
somehow, I started liking them a few years ago. And in the US, I get tired of buying these Haas avocados, which is what they have at all the stores.
Mhm.
That's the style type, I guess, the variety. And they're not that large, and of course the nut inside is enormous. So
Right.
how much avocado meat do you get? It's not that much. Uh, Here is a Dominican avocado.
Wow.
It's huge. Now let me show you the inside.
Oh,
La,
man.
you can make a lot of guacamole with this thing.
And they probably taste better than the ones we get up here too, I'm sure.
The quality of the meat inside that is amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
they're really,
And that could
really
be
good.
part of why I don't like it is, the ones I have are always like kind of mushy and ugh.
Well, the life of an avocado. You buy it and it's
Yeah.
not ready yet. Not ready yet.
Not ready.
Not ready yet.
Gone.
Not ready
Yep.
yet. Not ready yet. Oh, I'm ready. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
Oh,
mushy.
yeah. Who is it? The Oatmeal had a great cartoon about that. It was awesome. Same kind of thing.
Oh, gosh. All right. So back to discussing moving.
Yeah.
By the way, prices at the store, everything is, of course, in Dominican pesos. And at the moment, it's about 60 pesos to the dollar.
Oh,
So, a bottle of wine minimum's about $500. Dominican.
Right.
Which is what, about eight to 6 times. Yeah, that's about $8.30. Is for a cheap bottle of wine, and so it's just amazing to see. Hey, here's some bananas, and they're only $48 a pound.
That's awesome. Love it.
It's a little we go out to dinner, and average dinner tab might be $7,000 or $8,000.
Yeah.
But that's for three, and that's Dominican dollars.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What is that in real money?
Yeah, it's we've spent typically $30 a meal for a nice meal with wine and an appetizer and a meal. So the prices overall are pretty much what you'd find in the U.S. Pretty much.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm curious about directional FM antennas, Chris.
Yeah.
And this is done so you can short space another FM station on your frequency or an adjacent frequency, right?
Correct. Yep.
That's typically why it's done, to squeeze it in, and so you can hit, or maybe you want to hit the city of financial interest. Let's call it. May or may not be the city of license, but the city of financial interest you want to hit better. And so the place you can put the tower to is here, and that's too close to there, and so you have to not transmit there. So what's been your experience here with installing and proofing out, or showing that it's working properly?
Sure. Well, I've done several of these now, and there's a lot of reasons to do it. Most of them are what you're saying, where there's a place where you want to put it, and either for financial reasons or whatever, that really would be a good place to locate. But normally for a non-directional signal, it would be too short spaced or whatever, it wouldn't fit there. So with the directional antenna, you can kind of carve out places where you don't want your signal to go. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating the same signal level off that side of the antenna that you would if it was at the FCC's, what they call their license coordinates. So for example, if I go 10 miles from the antenna, and if the antenna was actually at the reference coordinates, I would only be able to get a 30 dB signal 10 miles away from where I want to put it. Well, then I've got to have a directional antenna that will attenuate that direction down to 30 dB or whatever when I'm out that far away. So that's really what a directional signal does, is it pulls in the signal so that the contours are appropriate for where the station would be if it was actually non-directional. So in a nutshell, there's that. And then there's some other things you got to remember too with the directional. Is there's a limit to how tight you can make those contours. I believe you can't go more than, I want to say, is it 5 or 10 dB per degree or per 10 degrees in spacing or something on the rotation. So, you also can't do these crazy things like AMs where you have, a full contour and then just a little notch of 0 and then back around. So usually with FM,
you can't count on a tight null. That's not part of what you're allowed to do with FM directionals.
Right. So essentially what you're doing is, most directional FMs look like a flat tire. Basically, they've got you round on one side, flat on the other. But unlike AM, where AM works generally with the towers, the power or lack of power to each individual tower and the phase and everything to create that directional pattern. With FM, what you're doing is you're using parasitic elements to direct the signal from where you don't want it and push it to where you do want it. So that's also a common thing with FMs that people forget when they do these, is the gain on the antennas is measured at the maxima of the pattern. And so the gain is not the same as a non-directional antenna, because you don't the signal that you're limiting on one side doesn't just go away, it goes somewhere. And what they do is they push that into the maxima of the pattern. So you're going to have a whole lot of gain on the front side of that antenna. So for example, like I said, for this directional antenna right now, the TPO that I need is 1.5 kilowatts, but it's only a 2-bay antenna. But that's because the lack of signal on one side gets added to the signal on the other side, and so the gain is much higher in that direction. And that's something that people sometimes don't understand. They just figure you're building this antenna and it just sucks up the RF or something and it goes away. But essentially you just have these various, and the way you do these is they get modeled. So when I ordered this antenna, I contacted ERI and I said, okay, here are the measurements, the face of the tower, and they need everything. They need the tower size, the faces, the direction of the tower, which direction is everything. And then they create a model of that antenna, and then they design the antenna with the parasitic elements to be mounted exactly where they specify in the tower. And the elements are, a lot of times they're rods or they're bars. They're basically reflectors that go on the backside of the antenna, and they can use the tower structure too as part of those elements. So they incorporate all of that into the design of the antenna. So, then what happens is, the antenna gets here, tower crew puts it together, they go up, they hang it exactly where it's supposed to be in the azimuth that it's supposed to be. But then you have to have a surveyor come out and survey and verify that the antenna is actually in the direction that it's supposed to be. And a difference of more than a degree, even sometimes a difference of a degree is a problem. Unfortunately, both the times that I did them, they were off a little bit, and there were two different solutions. So the first one I did was off, but it was not a real tight directional pattern. So I was dealing with Shively at the time, and I was it Bob at Shively? I don't remember the guy's name now. He's not there anymore.
Bob Surratt.
Bob Surratt. Bob said, he said, well, what did the surveyor find? And I said, well, it was supposed to be oriented at 320 and it's 322. And he's like, I'll just rewrite my paper. It should be fine. So he did the math and said, yeah, it's okay. And rewrote his directions to have the azimuth match what was measured. And that was really simple. In the case of this one, it was off by a degree, and it was enough where we had to get all kinds of certifications showing that it's not going to be an issue being off by a degree. Because the way that the FCC does it, you don't do a proof like you do with an AM, where you go out and you do radio points or everything else. They, the kind of the onus is on the antenna designer and the licensee to make sure that, the pattern that you submitted to the FCC for your construction permit matches the pattern of the antenna that they design. And then I certify on the license that I watched them assemble it, and it was assembled the way it's supposed to be, and there wasn't any cheating. And then the antenna manufacturer certifies that if we installed it the way that it was supposed to be installed, that it meets that criteria, and here's the pattern. So those are the two things that have to happen right out of the gate with a directional antenna. So they're not as, it's not one of those where you're slapping an antenna up and calling it good. The antennas are not cheap. There's a lot of work that goes into them. But as we mentioned at the top, it offers a lot of opportunities to put stations in places where they normally couldn't go, or in some cases, upgrades that you normally couldn't do because you're short spaced or whatever. Well, if all of a sudden an opportunity opens up in a certain direction where all of a sudden you're no longer up against a co-channel or something, you can do an upgrade and keep the pattern in the areas where nothing has changed. You can keep that the same and increase the signal in directions where you have the opportunity to increase them. So there's several reasons to do it, but it is, it's a process, and it's something that has to be done very diligently. It's not something that, the tower crews I have to do these, I usually, there's a really high end tower crew that I use to do these because, it matters that it's done correctly, because if it's not, you're going to have a lot of problems. So,
and do it again. Go back and do it.
Well,
again.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, you'll have issues where, either it's not, it's totally not aimed right, or it's assembled wrong and you have interference and you're taking it down and rebuilding it and putting it back. Or even with these elements, if they do it wrong, it can actually affect the antenna performance. So, every piece of this has to be perfect. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues. So, because again, even a degree or two with certain directional antennas can affect the signal or prevent the signal from going where you want it to go, and putting it in places where you don't want it. So, in our case, the degree, there was some debate on whether or not it was actually a degree off, because a surveyor, and that's another fun thing, is surveyors don't know how to deal with this. They don't run into this very often. So there was some debate there on whether or not the surveyor actually got it accurate or not, but it all worked out in the end. But yeah, I mean, if my signal wants to go this way, and I put it in 2 degrees off, all of a sudden it's this way, and that can cause some unintended consequences.
So tell you what, let's switch topics a bit. I'm going to show a few pictures, and I was just getting ready to type a message to Suncast. Suncast, if you'll scroll into my photo album, and there's a picture of me holding an IP radio. It's like a figure eight, it's like a double dish antenna. If you can scroll down to that one, and we'll start there, and just there you go. All right, Chris, I'm happy to have you. Yeah, it's a toilet. It's a double toilet. It's a stereo toilet. Chris, I'm happy. Well, even with comments like those, Chris, I'm happy to have you jump in.
That's one heck of an IP radio.
We wanted to run Livewire over this. So here's the backstory. Now, yes, I'm a little bit of a Livewire crazy guy. I work for the company that invented it, got patents and all that. But we moved several stations in the Greenville, Mississippi area. We bought some stations that were owned by Debut Broadcasting, and we consolidated them into a facility that was owned by Elijah Mundy. So we bought 2 sets of stations and put them together into one building, the building that Elijah Mundy had. So anyway, we wanted to, so we're going to use the tower that Elijah owned in a little tiny bump in the road called Heads, Mississippi. 650-foot tower is going to hold all of our FM stations. And I'm thinking, okay, we can spend literally tens of thousands of dollars on STLs, or since we were a full Axia facility in the studio anyway, or that's what we were building, could we get Axia out to the transmitter site? And the only piece of gear at the transmitter site that we would need for STL would be an STL dish like the one I'm holding here, and an Axia X node to turn that IP audio back into left and right stereo audio for our processors. We didn't have any processors that could take Livewire directly, so we needed to turn them into left-right audio. So I'm holding here the Ubiquiti Air Fiber 5. It's full duplex, so it transmits and receives at the same time, obviously on 2 different frequencies. So it's not time division multiplexed. It's 2 different frequencies all the time. I thought, well, this will work better for Axia Livewire, and it does. It has been on the air now for almost 10 years. And we've had very little trouble. The only trouble we've had has been actually sun fade. Huh? How do you get sun fade on an IP?
I've had that.
Well, twice a year the sun comes up right behind one end of the link, And
Yep.
for IP radios to work, it's got to work both directions. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So anyway, let's
Country
move
and
on.
Western.
This was me kind of testing it. Now, oftentimes you can't get IP radios to work with each other on the ground. They kind of need to be up in the air in order to really talk to each other. But this was me pre-configuring, and you can see on the laptop there, you can see an X node display as I was just kind of pre-configuring this so it would hopefully work when we threw them up on the tower. Next picture. We'll see what's along. Oh, okay. This was at the studio end, at the studio STL tower. This is about 125 feet above the ground, and this is me just beginning to get it going. GPS light is on, so each end of this has a GPS radio built in. This one is the master, and then the only reason that there's partial digits on the displays there is because the shutter on the camera was too fast, and so those are scanned. So that's not a mistake. I did make the mistake of only using one Cat5 or Cat6 connection to the radio. It's allowable to have one for data and the other for monitoring and control, and I wish I had done that. You can set the radio up so the same cable does the trunked data from one end to the other, or in my case, it really wasn't trunked. It was going to a single device at the other end. But I wish I would have run two cables, and I cheaped out and didn't do that. Here, the sun was a little bit darker towards sunset. You can see that's the signal strength. You can see the remote received signal strength at -70 and the local received signal strength at 68. So the radios talk to each other, and you can see all this information about them. And of course, I used a label maker to put the IP address, local IP address right there. Let's move on. See what's next. So again, as this is obviously at night, I could just about see the tower far away, just to make sure I was trying to point in the right direction. But really, the signal strength indicators were a better indication of that. Now, I got to tell you, what was interesting about this setup, and I think this is probably the picture where we want to stay on for a minute for me to tell you about it, this is where I want to be, is that at first I aimed these IP radios the same way that the 950 STLs were aimed. So from this site where I'm at on that tower, it was an STL tower for the studio, there was a 950 STL dish. And at the tower site, there was a 950 STL dish. And they were pointing at each other, carrying the station, the one original station that was at this building. Well, but I noticed there was a 20 dB gain amplifier at the transmitter site. I'm thinking, why do they need a 20 dB gain amplifier?
Because it's not aimed right.
That's a little strange. Yeah, well, so I aimed my IP radios the same way that the 950 STLs were aimed, because I couldn't physically see the other end. And they just didn't work at all. I mean, not even close. Nothing. Nada. So I got to looking. And I thought, well, let me draw this on a map. So I got, Google Earth out. I drew it on a map. Those 950 megahertz STL dishes were pointed nowhere near each other. They were both pointed toward the town of Leland, Mississippi, which is the city of license for one of our stations, but which made a triangle out of the whole nasty mess. And that's why there's a 20 dB amplifier at the transmitter site. So I went to the 9. Yeah,
I find that a lot, actually, because when people were putting these up, they didn't really do anything. They just kind of pointed it in the direction that they thought, and as soon as they got a signal, they called it good.
Exactly. It was terrible. So I fixed the 950 situation, and the best way I did it was I found on Google Earth, I found a landmark about a mile away, something I could see from the tower, but far enough away that it would be really precise and accurate. Okay, so I drew a line and found a landmark. And in the case of in the town here, it was literally the northwest corner of a huge warehouse. So I could point, I was looking for something I could identify from the tower. And there was this huge warehouse you could see on the Google Earth, and it was really just sliced the 2 feet of the corner off of the edge of that. And so I pointed at that, and then I went to the transmitter site, and I looked at it and thought, oh my gosh, we're pointing straight through a cell tower. It's across the road. Well, not quite straight through. It was like 5 degrees off of the center of the cell tower. And we pointed it there. And voila, the 950 worked fine without the amplifier. How about that?
Surprise, surprise.
And so then I pointed the IP radios the same way as the others, and woo, they lit up and came to life, and everything was just hunky-dory, and they have worked ever since. Once in a while, we have a strange temperature inversion, and they go away for a few minutes, but otherwise pretty good. Hey, we're going to continue the story in a few minutes. I see it's already about 49 minutes after the hour. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, with Kirk Harnack and Chris Tarr, is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store and their amazing manufacturer. You know them and love them, and I do too, and that's Innovonics. Innovonics won an award at the NAB show that just ended last week for the product we're going to show you right now on screen. It's the Innovonics Triple Tuner, the Model 677 Triple Tuner. This thing is just as cool as can be. It is brand new, and it won a big award. It's now shipping. What it is, it's meant to be an EAS monitor receiver. It's in a compact half-rack package, 3 built-in discrete frequency agile receivers, and each one of them is capable of AM, FM, or NOAA weather radio. So if you need 3 NOAAs, you got it. You're not going to need that, but if you do. 3 FMs, you got it. AM, FM, NOAA, you got it. 3 AMs, you got that. Each receiver has a balanced mono XLR audio output, serve as your EAS monitor or your off-air monitor throughout the broadcast facility. And it's got an easy front panel setup with a jog wheel menu navigation and front panel readout. On the back panel, it's got 6 rear panel GPOs that can be user assigned for various alarm functions. You can tie that into your remote control or into your Axia system through a GPIO node and run that into Pathfinder if that's what you have. It has a dynamic web interface though too, and you know Innovonics is famous for their web interfaces, how clear and concise they are, how much information they give you and controls they give you. So it's got that built in, and you can monitor the radios from any web-enabled device. You can actually listen to it. Plus, it has SNMP, and that makes Chris Tarr's socks roll up and down. The SNMP that is fully supported. Is your socks okay, Chris? They doing all right?
Now you blew them off.
So check this thing out. It's so good that it did win a big award from Radio World magazine. And so we recognize the value of that and the value of Innovonics, their triple tuner. They make so many products. It would take us an hour to go through them all. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to tell you about the Model 677 triple tuner. So congratulations to their winning that award. And if you want one of these or 2 of them or whatever you need for your facility, go to Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc, or you can give them a call at 352-622-7700. Check that out. They're great people at BGS. I've been doing business with them for literally years. I guess since the early 90s, I've been ordering from Broadcasters General Store. Thanks a lot, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech, and thanks Innovonics for giving us something really good to talk about. All right, Chris and I are here. We're talking about moving stations, and so we're going to keep it on the RF angle. And Suncast, if you want to go back to some pictures, that'd be awesome. So once we got the path dialed in, and didn't take what was there before, that was fine. All right, so I guess we will move to studios just for a minute, although there's some RF sitting there. This is in American Samoa, and this was the facility that they are in now. I moved this about 6 years ago. And we bought some extra deep racks. Thank goodness. This is the kind of rack you need these days at radio stations. You know, it used to be we had these racks that were, I guess, about 20 or 21 or 22 inches deep. And now you got to get these really deep racks. Chris, how deep are these? You probably buy plenty of these, don't you?
No idea. Haven't bought anything that deep yet.
Okay. Yeah. To hold servers. You need racks like this with the rear rack rails. So this is in the rear rack getting ready. Sure. And that little Scala mini flector, we do use that. I forget if as maybe a backup or for one of our stations, because we were live wire between the studio and the transmitter at first because it worked so well in Greenville, Mississippi. We did it in Samoa, and we could move literally 3 stations of FM audio with that. But now we have converted because we want dual redundancy. We're using micro MPX now for all of our stations in Samoa. So we we brought our processors back to the studio, and I know you can't see that here. And then we go into micro MPX and send that at a much lower bit rate and dual path as soon as we get that hooked up to the transmitter site. So we can even use public internet as backup. Here's the back of the studio building in Oh, the transmitter site. Yeah, that's you see that mountain in the middle of the picture, way in the back. That's where the
Yep.
transmitter is. That is about almost
Oh,
3 miles
and
away.
that is not Pago Plaza. That's removed from, right?
Yeah, we moved out of
Okay.
Pongo Plaza. We moved into this place. Although we're going to move out of this place before too long. We're our lease is going to be up, and we want to move elsewhere. Let's see what's next here on the next picture. Oh yeah, there's even a better close up of the transmitter site. You can see. Oh, you can see the towers there. And then here is what we mounted at the studio. We had a custom little tower built that is attached to the building quite sturdily. And then there's that Air Fiber 5, and above that the Scala Mini Flector. All right, what's next here? This is the again more of the rack room under construction. This station has 2 studios plus a newsroom. Those are all in the more forward part of the building. Let's see what's next. You can see the furniture there. It's some of Rod Graham's furniture. And then here's one of the studios under construction. This might be the Samoan language station here under construction. You can see that we pulled wires through the walls, getting a few pieces of gear first put in. These are still on the air. These Cisco, it says Axia core switch, main and backup, because Samoa is a long ways away. Whenever I buy Ethernet switches, you just buy two, and configure them both and test it out. We killed one, moved all the cables to the other one, and turned it on. And 4 minutes later, it's back on the air again. So that's cool. Let's move on. And then here's one of the studios. In this picture, this is really portable folding tables that we put everything on at first. Thank goodness Larry Fuss and Joey Cummings went back and put in real furniture about a year later. I did not make the trip for that, but Joey and Larry took all the gear, put it on the floor, and put everything back with real furniture. But that's all we had at the moment. Sometimes you move, and it's just not what you want at first, So
got to work with what you got.
Sometimes you do. And that was we had to move furniture from the old place, over to the new place. And I think they may have bought some more furniture. Are there more pictures to be seen, Suncast? Yeah. Okay. Just another shot of this is the KKHJ control room. This is our main station. All right, we'll move on. This is at the transmitter site. So this is the other end. So we have a Scala. Now that actually the Scala you see there, the 950 mini Flector, that is actually pushing station's audio to another mountain. So here, this picture, this is on Mount Olatelli, which in Samoan means telephone mountain. The FAA is up there. TV station. No, TV's not there. Just a lot of stuff is up there. Mostly the FAA, but our little FM is up there. We're getting ready to build a new tower there to hold the stuff there. That's just a Roan 25, and you can see its leg is pretty small for the Air Fiber 5. So we're putting a bigger, fatter tower up there. There's also a lot of internet backbone up there. And by backbone, I don't mean carrier backbone. I mean just local suppliers backbone. Let's move on to the next picture. This is back at the studio. This is we moved the NEC phone system, but since then, actually it's still in operation, but we're going all VoIP phones there. We've got the Hawaii numbers dialed in to the VoIP phone system, but we haven't got the Samoan numbers installed in that one yet. But this is where our internet comes in, which is actually just about reliable these days. They did put an undersea. It's a used undersea fiber, but hey, it's better than none. So we have fiber coming in, and and that's where all the phone stuff goes. You need a board like that to mount stuff. You can see a Ubiquity surge protector there in the middle of the board, so that our signal goes through that before it goes outside. Let's see what else is here. What's next, Suncast? Okay. We're going to move a little bit. This is Greenville, Mississippi, just after construction. Now, since this picture was taken, we've actually built a room around this rack, and we've built an engineering room that has its own air conditioning, which is great. That stuff, it's nice to have this at a better temperature. And when we first put that rack in, we didn't have the air conditioning in. That's something you ought to plan for, keeping that stuff cool. We've probably gone through a couple of UPSs in there as well. I want to show you this picture. I stuck my phone camera inside the back of the rack of EMF, K-Love. This is in Heads, Mississippi, and I want to show you the LED lighting strips that they put.
Yeah, I've seen
inside the
their
back of the
cabinets.
rack.
They put them in all of them. Yeah, that's great.
Isn't that cool? And
Yeah.
they also put a temperature probe. You can see the temperature probe going to the ventilation vent right there, the air conditioner vent. They've got it down to a good science. You can learn a lot by looking at other people's installations, especially a company that's got, what do they have? 800, 1,000, 1,300? I don't know. They got a bunch
Well,
of.
they lease space at one of our sites, and I know their engineer really well. And yeah, I mean, their stuff is just, but they build all that stuff in advance, and they just ship the entire rack out, which is really cool.
Yeah. You can learn a lot from looking at other people's good stuff. Next picture, we'll get a couple more, and then we'll take our last break here. There's the back of the EMF rack, and they got a lot of stuff going on. And as time goes on, they're getting better and better ways to consolidate more of the stuff. But they have to take care of a lot of responsibility at each transmitter site. Not only reliability, because their nearest engineers are 3-hour drive away in Memphis from this particular site, but they also have to do EAS insertions at these sites, and they can interrupt from their network control center each site. And this site is fed by satellite, and eventually they'll have more terrestrial feed. But they have a lot to think about and standardize on. Let's look at the next slide. And I just want to show you the transmitter side. Obviously, we moved here at one point over time when I installed that Air Fiber 5 system that had Axia on it. And if I didn't make it clear earlier, I want to make it clear. The reason we used Axia over IP with just an X node at the transmitter site because it was cheap. We did that whole STL for 4 FM stations for a grand spanking total of under $4,000. And that was the cost of the X node and the cost of the 2 Air Fiber 5s and the outdoor Cat 5 cable and surge protectors. So yeah, so this site has several FM transmitters there, and there's the EMF K-Love transmitter setup. Again, always good to look at other people's stuff and take notes and see what you might be able to, what tricks you can learn from that. All right. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack and Chris Tarr. We're talking about moving transmitter sites, and so many things to think about. I kind of formed a checklist before we started the show. And while we're not going to go through that checklist here on the show, I will put it in the show notes. And it's not right or wrong. It's just, hey, maybe things that you want to think about. So it's kind of a lengthy checklist for studio moves and for transmitter moves. And hey, it's actually not Chris approved. I should run it by you, Chris.
There you go.
It's not Chris. It's not Chris approved, but I'll put it in the in the show notes, and maybe you listeners and viewers can suggest additions.
I will add
Chris.
I will add really quick, since you were on that topic. I have done live wire over the Air Fiber stuff too, and it works well. In fact, I had a situation where it was just one site, and I had an Omni 11, so I just did live wire to the Omni 11 over the IP.
Sure,
and it worked really well. So that is something that certainly is becoming more and more favored these days. The Ubiquiti stuff is really affordable and works really well. It is very stable. I have one site where I have 2 hops with Ubiquiti radios, and it's been running now for 4 years without a single failure. So the stuff works really well.
It's a station that I've done some work for in Cookeville, Tennessee. Ed Bucant may have been the one who set a lot of this stuff up, but it's even got that he feeds 3 or 4 stations with live wire over IP radios. One of them is a licensed 11 gig hop that is, ever since we found a bad connector and fixed that, it's been working great. So it certainly can be done. I got to tell you, I've moved away from it in Samoa just because I'm so far away. And what you can't do is take an off-the-shelf IP radio with little configuration and plug it in and have live wire work through it. You've got to be there to set things up properly, and not everybody can do that. And I'm so far away that I wanted a system where you could take an IP radio off the shelf and put in your SSID into it, and it's probably going to work okay. And that's why I like Micro MPX, because it's a much lower data rate. It's got forward error correction. It puts up with a few packet losses. And, I love the live wire over IP, but I'm not saying it's fragile, but it's brittle if something's not right. And as long as stuff is right, it's going to work.
Yep. Exactly.
Glad you agree, Mr. Chris. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio, and Chris Tarr is here to tell us what's cool at Angry Audio. Chris?
Well, first of all, the big news out of NAB is Triple Helix Technologies, which is our friends at Max Connect, our friends at Angry Audio, and our friends at Logitech have gotten together and are forming a new group. And of course, you know what that means, just nothing but great things. Angry Audio is is a group that I mention a lot, and I'm very passionate about their products. And, here's another example of that where this weekend I'm going a project in our La Crosse facility, and I need a way to cleanly route some analog audio at a transmitter site, and I don't want to. That's one where I don't have any live wire coming to it or anything, so it's just straight off of an IP codec. Well, distribution amplifiers are a pain. You remember that with the turn pots, they get all crackly and the wires are hanging out the back. Well, Angry Audio has a really, really nice distribution amplifier. It has the Studio Hub Plus connectors on it, built-in silent sensor. You have 2 inputs for it, and you can do left, you can have it fail over from one to another and have it run all kinds of different things. And then they've got gizmos like this that will do that, kind of an override thing. If you've got, that's the analog, that's a distribution gadget. They've actually got a rack mount one. But again, the great thing about Mike's equipment, Catfish's equipment, is he gets it. I mean, he gets that not only does this have to have good audio quality, but power supplies, things like that. The construction of it has to be rugged. It's not just, we'll throw this together and sell a lot of them for really inexpensive. It's quality products to solve solutions. And these are things that we run into every day, and we don't want to run into them again. So when you buy an Angry Audio product, you're putting it in and you're walking away and you're letting it go. That's the kinds of things that you can find. They've got the audio processors, they've got studio signal lights, they've got gadgets, they've got gizmos. All of these things are to make your job easier so that you're not having to create these things with, off the shelf parts and Frankenstein something together, or even worse, have something that doesn't work really well just because you need something to work. So whenever you're working on these studio projects or these transmitter moves, this is a great option for solving some of those problems you're going to run into. Like I said, in a case with a transmitter site where I needed a distribution amplifier, I got one that works really, really well. I'll tell you what, problems disappear when you get angry. AngryAudio.com. Check them out online. You can also talk to your favorite broadcast equipment supplier for more information on that. And I'll tell you what, you're going to love their products. I love them. I use them. I'm not just talking smack. I love their stuff. And because they solve a lot of problems for me, and they do it very well. AngryAudio.com. Check them out.
Thanks so much, Chris. And our show is also brought to you by Max Connect. Now, Max Connect Angry Audio. Now, they're kind of together. I mean, they're separate companies. Anyway, you mentioned Triple Helix, a new company offering three technologies and under one umbrella. We'll see how that pans out and what it means for us as customers. But let me tell you about Max Connect. Websites, maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny, MAXXKONNECT. And I want to remind you about the whole list of services that they offer. Not only do they offer the original Max Connect wireless way of getting internet over 4G LTE modems, and it's also high priority, high packet priority, but they also offer you engineering services. And if you're like me, if you're like Chris, if you're like a lot of engineers, you may be too busy to take on a whole new project, or maybe 2 at the same time. Maybe your ownership says, hey, we got to get these 2 things done in the next 3 months. You say, dude, we need to bring in another engineer to handle that one while I handle this one. They handle studio construction, analog and AOIP, transmitter installation, transmitter site upgrades. They do have tower services now. That's cool. Automation installation and setup, solutions for connectivity, streaming services, audio processing, installation and setup. They're good at that. NRSC measurements, AM stations, remember, you got to do that once a year. Grounding and installation upgrades. So many people ignore that grounding, proper grounding, and that can make a huge difference. Of course, they offer this Max Connect U192 MPX USB sound card. That's a cool piece of gear because more and more people are interested in doing their FM audio processing on a PC or on a server. I'm going to be doing more of that myself with some new stations that we're acquiring. Plus Max Connect and Max Phone. So many things that Max Connect can do for you. Their website is Max Connect, KONNECT. And Josh Bone runs a great company. He's putting together a team of people that can be very helpful to you, not only in the new equipment, but also in equipment repairs. They do a lot of that. There's a few things they don't repair, and they let you know up front what they do and don't repair, and they can refer you to other people if they don't. And then all these installation and consulting services. So check them out. It's busy times for engineers. We don't always have time to do the job well or do it right. And oftentimes the best thing is to bring somebody else in to get her done for you. Thanks a lot, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Chris, we got time for a tip of the week, and then we got to go. We've been talking about moving, and mostly moving transmitter sites. So many things to think about. I'll publish in the show notes my list of things to worry about. What might be your top advice to leave us with? Muted. Well, we're still not hearing Chris Tarr. We're not sure what he's doing there, but he's okay. Well, I'll tell you what. While Chris is reconnecting, let me look at my list for executing a move. When you're thinking, are you back?
I'm
Okay,
back.
go ahead, Chris. Yes.
So
you saved me from making a fool out of myself now. Go ahead.
I can't save you from that. I was going to say it's not really a tip as much as a thought with today's technology. Learn what you can about these IP radios, because I was talking last night with the gentleman who owns the radio station, my coworker, Dave, and it's amazing now that we no longer have to rely on line of sight to transmitter sites. So it allows us a lot of flexibility on where we build a site for studios, and also finding locations to put antennas, like with all these translators and things that we're doing. So it helps to think outside the box and realize that while for years the composite 950 STLs have been the gold standard, it's not the only option anymore. And although some of these other things aren't necessarily as 100% bulletproof as an STL, they are 99% reliable. And as long as you know what you're doing when you set them up, they'll give you good service, and it will allow you to do some things. Audio quality is much better, that sort of thing. It'll open up a lot of pathways for you. And, again, for us, we're mostly small market stations. All of my transmitter sites now have internet, and, one form or another can have different program delivery. So think about that, as you move forward.
Indeed, all of my transmitter sites, I think, probably save one, and that's on Mount Alava in American Samoa. Everybody's got internet. Some of it's via IP radio from the studio, from the station. So we're providing our own internet, the transmitter site. And Chris, I would add to what you said too. We are used to the robustness of 950 megahertz STLs. They tend to just work and work and work. Of course, when they don't, if you don't have a spare on the shelf, you've got
Right.
maybe several days of repair. You may have a real problem being on the air. And one of the things I love about IP is that IP is not just for our industry. I mean, a 950 megahertz STL, that's only for us in radio. No
Right.
other industry uses that. And if you're in a different country that uses a different frequency band for that, you're just as screwed. So, but IP is around the world, and so there are all kinds of solutions, all kinds of ways to get IP from here to there.
Absolutely, yes.
And do it pretty cheaply. And then things like, and I know I'm a fan of Micro MPX, the company I work for, Telos Alliance. We make some boxes that do that. That's great, but it's licensed to other manufacturers as well, so it's not going away anytime soon. And Hans von Zutphen keeps improving it. But it allows for multiple, at least 2, in some cases 3, IP connections. So you can get your main connection, and you have a backup via public internet. I know I keep bringing up the site in Memphis that I have done some work for, WEVL, and I monitor them. And by golly, Comcast Xfinity is not 100%. There's times when they're down for a few minutes or a few hours or even a few days, and their backup, they haven't been off at the same time from T-Mobile and Comcast. So they've been on the air the whole time since we put that system in. So think about IP and how to use that. That's great advice. Chris, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. And next week, Chris, I hope to be at a Dominican FM radio station. We'll see what we can arrange. That'll be fun.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. And thanks so much to Suncast for taking care of producing today's show. Really appreciate you, Suncast. And appreciate you. Tell your friends, hit like, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech.